Hey guys, this is Jason. I'm reviewing Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, once again directed by Radio Silence, and once again stars Samara Weaving as Grace. It takes place right where the first film left off, after taking down the whole family that she was about to be a part of when she was getting married, and that family was revealed to be a cult of devil worshippers. And unfortunately for her, she gets stuck with 4 more families that are also cult members of devil worshippers, that put her in another terrible game and bringing her sister along, played by Kathryn Newton, to go through all of this terrible stuff. So both of them have to work together to survive and try to make sure that they don't get killed by any of them. I do think Radio Silence are talented directors, or as they're really called, Tyler Gillett and Matt Bettinell Oplin, who made some really good horror and slasher films. Like, I do like Scream 5 and 6, and I really liked Abigail. But when it comes to one of their earlier films, like the first Ready or Not, I think that one is a little overhyped. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's a terrible movie. It's still a fun watch. Like, the action is a lot of fun. It's very funny in a lot of moments, and Samara Weaving is really good in the film. But where it falls apart for me is when it gets to the third act, when everything is going down. I'm not going to get into spoilers in case some of you haven't seen it yet, but there's a character choice that happens in the third act that felt out of nowhere and didn't make sense for the rest of the film with how they were using this character throughout the rest of the film before the third act, where that moment just made the rest of that stuff in the film for this character just feel pointless, without any explanation or having a moment that earns that moment. So I wasn't super excited to see this film despite the director's work, but after they made Scream 5, 6, and Abigail, I was thinking maybe there'll be some improvement with this film, but unfortunately there wasn't a lot to improve here, and that doesn't mean I thought this movie was bad. It's not one of the worst movies I've ever seen. For me, I thought this movie was fine. It's okay. It's one of those sequels that's trying to be bigger than the original, which can be a usual issue for most sequels, especially for films like this. When they make sequels that are supposed to be 2 times brutal or more violent and more funny, they don't focus much on what should be better than the first, and that is often the story. But before we get into that, let me talk about the stuff that I liked first. Samara Weaving is fantastic in the film. Every scene she's in, she takes the spotlight, where she can be caring in some somber moments to being crazy when she's trying to defend both herself and her sister, and you can tell that she is really trying to do all that for her, where she has to lose in some scenes, and when you see her eyes widen like this, you're like, okay, some serious stuff is going down. I also like Kathryn Newton as her sister Faith, who starts out as a rebel type of character that has a bad attitude and not the greatest history with Grace, and both Weaving and Newton have really good chemistry here. Sure, there are some scenes where they do talk crap to each other, but they also have some scenes that feel effective and carry the film. The action sequences are also a highlight, and there's a lot in this film than there were in the first film, where they're very brutal and intense and very violent. Look out for one scene involving a washing machine, and that's all I gotta say there. The humor is also really good, and there are some moments with some characters that did make me chuckle, even though all 4 of the families that are trying to kill the sisters are just horrible people, but they had some moments and lines that did make me laugh. Now, this film does some things that are different, like expanding more the lore of these families that are a part of this cult, and the first film didn't do a whole lot because it was mostly focusing on one family, where it shows more about how these families operate and come up with their plans and their rules for this cult, and showing how it makes sense for a lot of the families here, and I do appreciate this film for having that lore, which is also another thing that most sequels have to do, expand more the lore and the world that the characters live in. But unfortunately, that's where my positives end. We can now get back to the issues with the main story, because that's the only thing in this film they didn't do better than the first film, where it just feels like I'm watching the same movie, because it's once again about a girl getting trapped with a family that's playing the game so that they can kill her, where it's filled with horrible people that run a cult. It takes place in one location, and they spend the whole night trying to kill her, where the main character has to defend herself, leading to a big finale that's supposed to be crazy. I just couldn't help but see those similarities when I was watching this film, and I couldn't help but think to myself, haven't I seen this type of movie already? I know that's exactly what the first film was, but if you're gonna do that and make it feel like it's the same movie with the sequel, spice it up a bit. Do something different with it. Because sometimes that can be forgiven, like Home Alone 2 for instance. It's pretty much a copy of the first Home Alone, but they did some different stuff to make it feel different compared to that one, where even though you see the similarities to that film, you still enjoy it because of how it spices it up. But here, this movie doesn't really do much to spice it up. It just makes it feel like the same thing. And now for the main subplot between Grace and Faith. Now, I've already praised Weaving and Newton's performances as these characters. It's just the way this movie handles their relationship that's kind of the problem, because there'll be times where you would see them hate each other and they haven't gotten along very well over the years, where they start off and have a lot of issues where Faith has a grudge on Grace for something that happened to them in the past, where later on we would have other scenes where they're talking it out and trying to work things out with their problems, leading to some heartwarming moments that would at times feel rushed to focus on more of the action. But then the movie just takes a complete 180 and decides to have the character hate the other character again, and can be very confusing. And I get that it's supposed to be dramatic purposes, and I get why this character would kind of take a 180, but there really isn't much explanation for why this character would do that, because their subplot in this film just feels a little underused and not fully shown. Now, there is another character that gets introduced that has a grudge on the main character, but for some reason this movie barely uses that character for the rest of the story. They make it look like they were setting this character up as supposedly the main villain of the film, but they barely use that character, where this character would only appear in a few scenes just to be like, hey Grace, I'm here to kill you because I hate you. And that just feels shoehorned in. Like, if you're gonna have this character play a big role, then give this character a bigger part and more screen time, but if you're not gonna do that, then don't use that character. And that's another big issue I have with this film, because it lacks a lot of character development that should have been there, but they barely use it. Ready or Not 2, for me, I thought was fine. It's not great, it does have issues. Sure, it does have a lot of great action sequences and great humor and great performances from our two main leads, but it has a story that's too similar to the first film, barely any character development, barely any characters that matter to the story, and there's barely anything here that feels different. Now, if you love the first Ready or Not and you just want to see this film for the action sequences and for the performances, then you're gonna have a fun time with this one. But if you want to see more character development and more of a story going on along with those action sequences and humor, you're gonna be disappointed. Now, I am gonna remain a fan of Radio Silence. I am looking forward to seeing what they do next, and I am actually looking forward to their Mummy film with Brendan Fraser coming back, but this film, unfortunately for me, just isn't one of their best films. I'm gonna give Ready or Not 2 Here I Come a C+. So guys, if you have seen Ready or Not 2 Here I Come, what do you think about it? Do you think it's as good as the first film, or do you think this film had too much action and there wasn't a lot going on in the story? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.